Streaming from outside the mainstream, Beyond a Pale, the podcast, hosted by Paleface.
I'm excited to speak with today's guest. She's the founder of the Self-Worth Initiative, and her mission is to empower others to create happier and more fulfilled lives. Deborah Weed, welcome to the podcast.
I am so happy to be here.
And I am happy to have you. I really am. So, Deborah, could you please share some of your background with my audience and also tell us about the Self-Worth Initiative?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to. I got to set the stage for you first, if that's okay. I was the director of development for Citibank, Florida, and I also worked on a $26 million pavilion with Disney and Universal consultants for Kia Motors. So everything was going great. I had an amazing finances, career, relationships, and then a health challenge derailed my career. My self-worth went plummeting. I should say, sorry. My self-esteem went plummeting. Because self-esteem, when I learned, is based on everything that's on the outside. It's everything that's external.
Right.
Like the career, the finances, and the relationship. And when you have or feel like you have nothing left, you have to dig deep. And I learned at that point that self-worth is our intrinsic value. Every single person who's listening right now is perfect. Their self-worth is amazing, but we're the ones that determine how much value that we have. And so from there, after being in bed for 3 years with a pretty hefty health challenge, I decided to create the Self-Worth Initiative. And since that time, I've been helping thousands of people to know how much they're worth and why.
So tell me about that value. How does someone actually create their own value out of that self-worth that we all innately have?
That is a great question. I think that's the ultimate question. I really do.
Well, I'm glad I asked it then. So.
Well, the first thing is to really you have to almost go back to when you were a kid. When you were a kid and you were like brand new and you were full of awe and wonder, what did you love to do? What did you love to do?
I wanted to be a cowboy, so.
You are. You're still a cowboy. You're doing a podcast, but
right.
You're still kind of like rocking it there. For me, I know that I loved social work. I mean, like I should say social work, but for kids, I wanted to make sure that everybody was okay. Everybody felt heard. I just wanted to look out for the underdog. It was like a natural thing in me. And the other thing that I absolutely positively loved was like creativity, art, singing. And those two things have actually merged to now. But here's where I feel like everybody gets lost. People tell them who they should be instead of who they are.
Right.
And they get really confused.
So how do we know who we are, and how do we allow ourselves to not be told what we should be rather than who we are?
Another amazing question. I think that we all have memorized emotions, like our parents and our teachers and our friends. They define us. They might say on the negative, you're stupid, you're too fat, you'll never you'll never be anybody. And if you hear that, can you imagine? I mean, like, I think all the time of everybody who has been told that thousands and thousands and thousands of times when they're a kid. And then they get into the world, and sometimes, here's the crazy thing, they try to overcompensate.
Right.
I should say that for me. I did. I was really bullied as a kid. And so I tried to overcompensate for, I thought it was a lack. self-esteem, I tried to get everything to look pretty and be wonderful. But on the inside, I really, really never felt like enough. So the first answer to that question is you have to recognize that you have a memorized emotion that you cannot outthink yourself from.
Ah, that's great. So with that, I want to ask you another question. Can you talk about fear and disappointment and how they're connected and how they derail people?
Thank you so much for asking that one. Well, you know what? My dad told me the most interesting thing. I always thought that fear was the thing that stopped people, right? I mean, don't you think that fear is like the number one objection?
Yes, but I also know that it empowers me sometimes. So
yeah, it does. It does. But you know what my dad told me? He said that it's disappointment. Disappointment is the thing that's going to bring people down more than anything. And let me tell you what he told me. He said, when you're disappointed, okay, I want you to think of yourself as a walking, talking chemical factory, right? And when you're excited, you've got all the feel-good chemicals going, and you're like, oh, yes, I can do this project. It's going to be amazing. And then you start out, and then somebody says it's not going to work. And you get a little disappointed, and you don't realize it. Here's the important point. You don't realize it, but the chemicals in your body, the emotions in your body start to get depleted, right? So then you dust yourself up, and you go again, and you really try to make things happen, and then you hit another wall. And if this happens over and over and over again, subconsciously, you'll never realize this, but subconsciously, it's the drop in the feel-good chemicals that you never want to have again. So guess what happens? You never try again. And my dad warned me that if I didn't keep going, even though it felt like it would be impossible, then I really never get to the success I was hoping for.
Right. That's a shame that a lot of people do that. So your self-worth initiative, I went to your website. There's a lot of really cool things there. Can you talk about that and all the things that you offer and tie it back to the music? Because I've noticed, I'd love my audience to hear about this.
Absolutely. Well, as you're probably starting to understand a little bit about me, I don't do boring. Boring me do not work.
I wouldn't have thought that.
So when I was in, let's go back to when I was in bed. And for 3 years, I was misdiagnosed. And I was like trying to look for a hero. And the hero ended up
being you. How about you?
No, well, yeah. I actually needed to reach deeper. But what I found out is that there was a penny, a 1943 pure copper penny that at that time, it's worth a lot more, but at that time was worth $250,000.
Wow.
I know. It was a big wow for me too. I was like, are you kidding me? And that penny became my hero, and I wanted to know more about it. So I did some homework, and I found out that the penny, the 1943 pure copper penny, was made by mistake. There was only 40 of them that were made, and that the reason they were so valuable is because they're pure copper.
Right.
And I had done a lot of productions. I had produced a lot of shows, and it just seemed like this got me being creative again to say, you know what? This is a perfect example for kids and their families to know how much they're worth.
Right.
I'm going to create a book and a musical based on this 1943 penny. And so during that, let's call it the downtime, that's exactly what I did. I created the book. I created a musical, and then we presented this musical all over the place with the Ability Explosion and SUNY University and Xylophone.
Oh, wow.
And the music was so much fun. Do you want me to sing a little bit of my song? I remember it.
Go ahead. You have me at a xylophone, so go ahead.
Okay. The one of the songs is the PU song. Okay, wait. I'm sorry. I have to tell you what the story is about, otherwise it won't make sense. There's two pennies. There's two pennies. And one penny in the story in the musical. One penny's name is Alistair, and Alistair is perfect, and he's never been circulated. He's never been touched. He's in a plastic case, and he thinks he's all that. And then there's Henry. And a bag of chips, exactly. And then there's Henry. And Henry kind of represented how I was feeling at that time. Henry has been in the garbage can. He's been somebody's lucky penny. He's been in the bank with a whole bunch of other pennies, learning that he's worth so much more together. And he's been in the washing machine, and he went on a wild ride. And these two pennies are going to find out how much they're worth and why. And I'm cheating or maybe I shouldn't cheat to the end of the story. I don't know. What do you think? Maybe I should
do what you have to do.
Okay. Well,
you make the rules.
It's a surprise ending, and it really is a very touching thing. I'll think about whether to share the ending or not. But
no, you don't have to. If you want to keep it secret, you can.
But one of the songs that the kids loved the most is where Henry is being thrown in the garbage can. Now, I am not a professional singer. I'm just giving everybody a heads up. And I might even forget my own words because I'm a little nervous. But this is basically how it goes. It goes, P-U, P-U, what am I going to do? P-U, P-U, what am I going to do? I'm stuck in a smelly garbage can, but am I really stuck? Will I change?
That's great, though.
But that was a great beginning.
No, I love it.
But the best part of the song is when Henry's like, he feels like he's lost his luck, but in the middle of the song, he's singing, I'll do the can, I can do anything, can, I'll do the can, with a better plan.
That's awesome. That's so sweet. That is great. Oh, you just kind of made my heart swoon a little bit because my grandmother, my deported grandmother, Helen, she wrote things like that and did things like that. So sorry about that if I got a little.
No, I'm glad you did. I want you. That's the whole point. The whole point of self-worth is to just like have some fun with it, because you know what? That's the other thing I think. I think when it comes to learning about self-worth, we take it too seriously. I mean, it's like I could. Right now, I'm working a lot with women, and I'm taking them from self-doubt to self-worth.
Right.
And so many times, everybody feels as though, I don't want to talk about self-worth. And yet, it can be fun because once you know your value, that's when you can be enthusiastic about life. And that's when you can take up the wand of wonder and get out there and do amazing things.
So how do you pass that self-doubt that people have? What do you give them as a tool to get past that self-doubt?
Well, yeah, I wish it was as easy as a bunch of words.
But it's not.
It's a process. I think that self-doubt is it for me. Self-doubt is the layers and layers and layers of, let's call it paint or whatever you want to call it, that is blocking your pure magnificence. So in essence, a lot of what I do is taking away things that don't work and redefining like who you really are. Because when you're unique and you shine the way that you were born to shine, there's no stopping you.
Wow, that's amazing. So Deborah, is there anything else that you would like to leave us with before we close out today's show?
Well, I'm so passionate about telling everybody how much they're worth. So whoever is listening right now, no matter what's happening, I know that we're in COVID. There's so much going on with jobs, careers, finances. I mean, talk about self-doubt.
Right.
I guess my takeaway would be this. Everything that you have been is based on self-esteem, and self-esteem is hierarchical. It's not the same as self-value. When you value yourself and you know your worth,
Right.
nobody can tell you that you're not good enough.
Well, that to me, Deborah, you're worth a million pennies.
Oh,
You're $1 million. So
then I'm so rich. That makes me
you
very
are.
happy.
Oh, I love this. This is great. So I urge all of you to connect with Deborah at selfworthinitiative.net. Deborah, are there any other ways that folks can connect with you?
Absolutely. I just started a YouTube channel and I'm really excited about it. So they can look up Deborah Weed on YouTube. And I would love to keep the conversation going. This is so much fun.
Well, you know what? I'm going to subscribe to that channel. I know I will. So that's great. I'm going to do it right after the show. So Deborah Weed, this has been great. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Godspeed.
If you're interested in being a guest on Beyond a Pale, the podcast, please visit beyondapale.blog/guest.